Children who have been referred to the government's anti-terror programme are being returned to schools without adequate support. That's the finding of a new report by the Children's Commissioner for England, Dame Rachel de Souza, who's calling for Prevent to be overhauled.
Many of them are fixated on violence. They've come to that through the internet often. So, you know, we've got children who are focused on killers, sharing pictures of beheadings, who are like in online communities where they're getting other children to like commit self-harm and watching it. It's horrible stuff. But you know, that they're not ideologically aligned.
Let's bring in child psychologist Kim McCabe, who is joining us. Really appreciate you sharing your time here on Sky News. Interested in the psychology around young people. We'll kind of get into the prevent part in a second. But firstly, just how easily influenced are young people by what they see online and the material that might be incredibly graphic or extreme that then comes into their view?
Their brains are still forming, their identities are still forming. They're incredibly vulnerable to being directed one way or another. But that's good news as well, because it means that we can come in and be a force for good, as well as all the input that they could be exposed to, particularly online, that isn't a force for good.
And talk to us about this idea of kind of this interest for some young people in kind of extremely graphic, extremely kind of dangerous content. Is this new, or is this just because it's more easily accessible now?
I think the curiosity about the world that a child is growing up in, that's nothing new. And actually it's part of their development. It's an important part of their development. That they have access to the kind of content that they do is new and extremely alarming, and needs to be, the companies, the platforms that are making this possible need to be held accountable. We can't ask children to keep themselves safe, or the parents, or schools, or even governments to some extent. So actually what we need is for the platforms to stop drawing children in the way that they are, presenting them with the kind of content that they get drawn down rabbit holes of extreme content. It's completely natural for children to be curious, and it's very compelling. And often these children aren't themselves extremists. They're just curious and maybe lonely, bored, looking for belonging, a sense of belonging.
So as Dame Rachel identifies, many of these young people understandably don't subscribe to an ideology, and Prevent generally works around ideologies and struggles slightly when it comes to someone that's got extreme views but not centred around a central core view. How do we then go about, you mentioned the fact that young people have got kind of elastic brains, they're malleable, they're influenced, they're adaptable. How do we then go about as adults saying, hey, so-and-so, you know, individual X, Y, or Z, let's kind of turn your thinking and your thought processes around. What can we do to make that shift?
So yes, 7 out of 10 children who are referred to Prevent aren't actually, don't fit their categories for who they're looking for. And it's because they're possibly lonely, or they're frightened, or they're angry. And they're searching for identity, for belonging, and for significance. And so that's the key. That's what we need to provide them with, is other ways to form their identity, to have a sense of belonging and to feel important. And we can do that in so many different ways. So, in fact, Prevent, at the moment, it's failing that 7 out of 10 children because it just sends them back with nothing. But what it's achieving is identifying that 7 out of 10 children actually do need something more. They need something else from us. And generally, there's so many different ways of providing that. At Rights for Girls, we work in person because we believe that's so much more powerful, and it's a great antidote to children disappearing and hearing kind of from people who they don't have a real connection with, although they feel like they do. So what can we do as adults around them? We can present them with other ideas. I think the key thing, though, is not to punish their curiosity, but to just give them alternatives and recognise that it's their job, particularly teenagers, it's their job to question everything and to push at the boundaries and to kind of go to the extremes, so that, because that's the way of finding out who you are and what you think. So we can't judge them or punish them for exploring extreme ideas, but a bit like, I remember when I was raising my children, if I didn't want to eat them to eat something, I didn't ban it. I just made sure there were loads of alternative, really appealing other things for them to reach out for.
Really interesting stuff. Kim McCabe, I really appreciate you joining us and sharing some of those thoughts. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.